SE versus iPhone 11. It's a. Hey there, friends on YouTube. My name is Jason, sometimes known as the JTL. This is Painfully Honest Tech. Tech so honest it hurts. If this is your first time here, thank you so much for stopping by. I really do appreciate it. And if you've been here before, thank you so much for coming back again. Yes. Thank you. Anyway, today we've got something to discuss, something that I've been meaning to do since the iPhone SE came out, and I just haven't gotten around to doing it. But today we're going to do it. iPhone SE versus iPhone 11. Now, they're both, I guess, quote-unquote, budget iPhones, but there are some significant differences between the two. There are some pros, there are some cons. I'm going to give you 3 pros and 3 cons for each of them. And then in the end, I'm going to tell you which one I think really kind of wins this versus matchup, and we can discuss. All right? First, let's start off with the iPhone SE. The iPhone SE just came out not too long ago. It's this little guy here. This little guy. And while a lot of people are sort of slagging on him because he is like not any like new, this is the iPhone 8 body. People don't seem to be happy about that, but I mean, people wanted it. Never mind. Can't please. Never mind. It's got this svelte iPhone 8 body with a 4.7-inch screen, LCD. It's a really good-looking screen, regardless of its actual PPI or any of that kind of stuff. As Floss likes to say, the PPI patrol can just go take a seat, because this is a good-looking screen. I'm sorry, but it is. I don't know what else to say to you. There's a lot to like about this phone, and so let's first go over the pros of this phone, and then then we'll talk about the cons. So, pro number 1, the size. The size of this phone is. I like the size of this phone more than I thought I would. I was never a big fan of this body style, the smaller of this body style. There were some reasons for that, but it didn't really have to do with the size itself. This is a very comfortable phone to hold. It's a very comfortable phone to hold, and that might be a big deal for a lot of people. It feels thin, it feels light, it fits in the pocket well. It's a really nice size for a phone, and it's a size that we don't get very much anymore because, well, phones are like gigantic. There are a lot of people who are waiting for this phone for a lot of different reasons, some of which we're going to touch on here today. But yeah, the 4.7-inch screen, just the overall feeling in the hand, it really is a nice phone to hold. Number 2, and this might seem obvious, however, the biggest thing that's attractive about this phone, or the smallest thing, depending on how you want to look at it, is the price. The price of this phone to start at 64 gigabytes of RAM is $399 American dollars, simoleons, whatever you want to call them. And that is a price point that Apple has not hit with a new phone in quite some time. I think the original iPhone SE might have been that price, but that was like almost 5 years ago or something like that. So $399, 64 gigabytes of RAM. How you feel about whether or not 64 gigabytes is the right amount of storage is your thing. It's your thing, man. I feel like I have used 64 gigabyte iPhones for a lot of the time that I've used iPhones, and I've used this iPhone since it's been out, and I never have any problem with 64 gigabytes of stuff. I set my stuff up so that it gets pushed off to the cloud, and everything's wonderful. This is going to open up the market for the iPhone to a lot of people who probably weren't in the market for an iPhone or wanted, whether or not they wanted to be. I mean, a lot of people can't spend $700 or above on a phone. This puts Apple squarely in the place that they need to be in terms of being able to compete with some of the lesser expensive phones out there, the mid-range phones that are very popular. Samsung has some very popular ones. LG has some very popular ones. There are very popular Android options out there, but not really any iPhone options until this phone. Another thing that's impressive about the price is what you get for the price. You get the latest chip. You get the A13 chip, which is the chip that's in the iPhone 11, 11 Pro, 11 Pro Max. It's the latest chip that Apple has released, and they'll have a A14 chip when the iPhone 12 comes out. But this gets that latest chip. The thing about the A13 chip is the A13 chip is just like, it just goes. It just goes and goes and goes and goes. I've never had an iPhone hiccup on me, and the A13 chip has not done it to me at all on any phone that I've used from this current lineup. So the A13 chip, you're just not really going to get that kind of power out of a lot of phones at this price range. So this is good for Apple. Pro number 3 is the screen itself. And I know you might say, well, you just told us that the screen is not so great. That's a debate that has been had and could be had and will be had forever and ever and ever. But the screen that we've got right here, there are a few things about it that I think might attract people to this phone instead of some of the more current models. For one thing, this screen is a full rectangle. And as a full rectangle, it doesn't have any big chunks bitten out of it. And that's not something that you can say for the other models of iPhones out there, iPhone 11 included. You get that, and people are like, oh, but there's big honking bezels. But hey, watch this. Look at this. I'm not touching the screen. So if I'm holding this guy and I'm watching a film or I'm watching a YouTube video or if I'm playing a game or something like that, I'm not touching the screen. That's one thing that really bothers me about full screen phones is that you're always touching the screen, and it's always doing something that you don't want it to do. The rectangular screen is... I didn't know that I would ever get excited about a rectangle, but here we are. I'm excited about a rectangle, and I'm glad that it's back. Now, there are a couple of potential pros that are person-specific, so I don't really want to put them overall against the iPhone 11, but there's Touch ID. A lot of folks wanted Touch ID back. They didn't like Face ID, or they were used to Touch ID or something like that, so they wanted the Touch ID back. The Touch ID is back, and that'll be a boon to a lot of different people. And also, I mean, we talked about size, but a lot of people don't want huge phones, and so there are a lot of things that are pro. The cons for this phone. Now, I mentioned this has 3 gigabytes of RAM, whereas the iPhone 11, 11 Pro, 11 Pro Max, they all have 4 gigabytes of RAM. Now, that's not really gonna make a big difference in terms of like day-to-day usage, but 3 gigabytes of RAM versus 4 gigabytes of RAM when you're using an iPhone it's going to maybe limit the number of things that stay open in the background and that kind of stuff, but iOS is very, very efficient. So it's a con on paper, I'm going to say, but iPhones have routinely had 3 and less gigabytes of RAM and still run fine. In reality, it's not, the average person is not going to notice any kind of real difference between how this phone might work and how another iPhone might work. Now, number 2, though, this is a bone of contention. We've got but one camera lens. It's a good camera lens. This thing takes great photos. That's one thing that people have been really impressed with the iPhone SE, and yeah, it takes really good photos. However, you just get this one camera lens. This can't take portrait mode for pets, which is a big deal to some people. I'm not going to judge, no judgment here. There's no night mode on this camera, and night mode is a big thing these days. Now, the biggest con of the iPhone SE is a con that for this size iPhone has always been a problem. Battery life. The battery life on this phone is not terrible. It's not great, though, either. You can get through one day. If you're a quote-unquote power user, you might need to charge by early evening, but when you compare this with the iPhone 11, which is, and all the other iPhones, but the iPhone 11 is what we're talking about here. The iPhone 11 is just like, has a stellar battery. And this one, once you get used to an iPhone where you can get probably 2 days of battery life, and then you have to go back to worrying about your battery life on a smaller phone like this, it's no fun. Battery anxiety is no fun. Let's move on now, though, and talk about the iPhone 11, because there are some pros, there are some cons about the iPhone 11 that might influence your choice regarding whether or not to get one of these. A pro to me with this phone is the screen size. Now, I've already said, that there's a big chunk of it taken out, but that's for the benefit of another pro that we'll discuss later. The screen size is just about the right screen size. It's a 6.1-inch screen, which to me is not too big and not too small. Watching video typing, all of that kind of stuff on the screen is really just is really fine and an enjoyable experience. I'm just gonna say it's enjoyable. I think it's a very good looking screen. I mean, look at that. That looks good. I like it. So screen size over the iPhone SE, that's a big one. 4.7 versus 6.1. I think if you just go by the numbers, then you have to give the win here. Pro number 2 is the camera. The camera here. You see this camera? There's 2 lenses. You got a wide, you got an ultra wide. Now the iPhone 11 Pro and Pro Max have 3 camera lenses. That adds the telephoto. But I like the choice here, the wide versus ultra wide choice. The camera also has pet portrait mode. So if that's a big deal to you, and I'm not making fun of anybody. I'm not making light of the fact that people want to take really tasty photos of their pets. I take a lot of photos of my pets. They're not very photogenic. They don't sit well for photos, but I try and get good photos of my pets. And if you can get good photos of your pets and you want pet portrait mode, then don't let anybody stop you. This does have night mode. This does have a lot of the features that the iPhone SE doesn't have. So camera is a big win here. The last Pro, number 3, for the iPhone 11, and this is one of those things that I guess goes down to personal taste, but just, I'm going to just say that overall, Face ID is a better security system than Touch ID. Touch ID, it works great. A lot of people really like it. However, for me, Face ID, it just makes using the phone so seamless. Whether it's my phone or my iPad or anything like that, by the time you've really looked at your phone, 99% of the time it's ready to open up. You can do security stuff for your banking apps and different apps like that using Face ID. You can use Face ID for Apple Pay. It's really, really seamless and almost makes you forget that there's a security measure in there at all. Face ID is also the most reliable security that I've used. Now, I know that in recent times with people wearing masks, Face ID needs to see the nose, and so that's been an issue. Hopefully that won't be an issue forever, but Face ID has really changed the way that the iPhone works for a lot of people. Let's get to the cons. Con number 1 is... And I never thought I'd say this, because when the iPhone XR came out and it was $750, everybody was like, oh my God, $750. I mean, now we've got a $400 iPhone. And so if you're somebody who's shopping and you're looking at this iPhone or that iPhone and price is what really matters to you, then the iPhone SE is probably the one you're going to grab over this. So it's hard to say that the price of this is a con, because if you compare this to the price of the iPhone 11 Pro, this is $300 cheaper. So, yeah, you know what I mean. Another con, although I've said that I like the screen for its size, I like the screen in general, it is something that lags behind in specs from the upper level models. I'm going to put that down as a con because it doesn't hold up to other phones in this space. Okay, so other phones in this $700 range can go to 1440p, much OLED screens, much tighter. Now the iPhone 12 is going to have an OLED screen. I don't know what the resolution is going to be, but that has been something that people have complained both about the iPhone 11 and the iPhone XR. So None of these cons are deal breakers at all. I think that Apple, by and large, balanced the pro and the con, the compromises and such with the iPhone 11 to almost a perfect level, and therefore the iPhone 11 is just kind of in that very sweet spot for a lot of people, and it's the very sweet spot for the iPhone lineup in general. But which phone wins? If you're just going to go on the sheer value proposition, then you have to go with the iPhone SE. $400 for basically a fully spec'd out iPhone with a few compromises made here and there. That's a hard deal to beat, and I think it's going to make a big difference in who chooses and how they choose to buy iPhones in the future. The people who are in the market that Apple's trying to capture for this phone are not really going to care about, oh, it doesn't look like the new iPhones. Oh, and for some of those people, for a lot of those people, I think the older design and the Touch ID are going to be one of the reasons that they decide to buy this phone. But as I just said, the best overall value in smartphones right now dollars to donuts, in my opinion, is the iPhone 11. Interesting statistics came out last week. The iPhone 11 was the best-selling phone by a large margin in Q1 of 2020. It beat the iPhone XR from last year's first quarter by, I think, about 5 percentage points. People are buying the crap out of this phone. And I think some of the reasons that we discussed here are some of the reasons that they're doing that. There's some compromises here, but there's not really that many. You get a lot of phone for the price of the iPhone 11. And when you're talking about an iPhone, $700 to start is a really good place to start. Apple has done a really great job of filling in the bottom end of their lineup so that there are options for a lot more people. And the iPhone 11 really represents, I think, probably the best option in an iPhone for the most people. Apple did something sneaky this year. They decided to call this the iPhone 11 instead of the iPhone 11R or something like that. They made the iPhone 11 the iPhone. And then the iPhones that would have previously been the iPhone 11 Pro and Pro Max are like the upgrades, and this is the iPhone. They're rejiggering their whole idea of what an iPhone is, and I think they're doing a great job. Overall, the iPhone 11, well, they're both great phones, but the iPhone 11 wins this. This versus goes to the iPhone 11. It's the best-selling phone that's out there right now. There's just not really a whole lot to recommend against it. Now, the iPhone might not be your thing, and that's totally fine. But for people who want an iPhone, this thing represents a huge value, a really incredible performance, battery life, 2 days of battery life with this phone. And I've gotten that consistently since it came out, since I got one. So 2 days of battery life, both phones great. iPhone 11 wins. That's the versus. iPhone 11 versus iPhone SE versus the winner. Which phone wins for you and why? Tell me down below. If you want to see additional coverage of the iPhone SE and the iPhone 11, then here are the 2 review videos that I did for those phones. You can check those out. There's also playlists that you can check out of all the different stuff. So go and click on one of these. And also don't forget to click that subscribe button so you can come back and see me again, because there's going to be more iPhone content, more all kinds of different tech content, and you know you want to be here. You know you do. Thanks once again for being here. My name is Jason, sometimes known as the JTL. This is Painfully Honest Tech. Tech so honest it hurts. Until next time, I'm out.